Then we are trying something new, and we can't quite work out the name.
No.
Highest on the list at the moment, walkie-talkie.
Yeah, that's a good one. I haven't thought of any others yet. Put me on the spot.
It's a list of one. It's a list of one, and I took the first one.
But what we need to actually talk about today is the Renters' Rights Bill, not to be confused with Renters' Reform.
Or Right to Rent.
Or Right to Rent. Oh, hello, Kat. Which is actually going to make huge change for landlords and tenants, in fact, when it comes into legislation, which is rumoured to be next summer, actually.
Yeah, it's most likely going to be next summer. There's a whole lot of weight behind it. There's a whole lot of campaign promises to say they're going to make a difference. They're going to see it through. It's currently still going through the House of Commons, although it's quite far into that process. It'll then go for a reading in the Lords. It might bounce back. But the reality is things are going to change. Like, we're going to have to adapt. The market is going to be different. Landlords are going to have a whole much more hoops to jump through.
Yeah. Well, we've been used to adapting. They've introduced a lot of change over the last few years that we've had to adapt to, both for landlords and tenants, in fact. I think ultimately what they want to do is level the playing fields between landlords and tenants.
Yeah.
My instinct, which we can talk about a bit later, is that it's perhaps going to make things more unfair for tenants in a roundabout way.
Yeah, like conversely, because the idea is to give people more security and to give a tenant more say over when they choose to leave their home.
Yeah. By making all tenancies open-ended. There's no actual fixed term for a tenancy, and that's going to be with immediate effect. So any existing tenancies will immediately become open-ended and periodic, whereby the tenant can give 2 months' notice to end a tenancy, and it brings an end also to what's referred to as no-fault evictions, where the tenant actually hasn't done anything.
Yeah, so those are what are those are called Section 21s, and they're just a landlord, the owner of a property, wants to bring a tenancy to an end for whatever reason. They don't have to justify it. They can just say, I don't want this tenancy to continue. And a tenant doesn't really have any recourse to say, but I want to stay.
Yeah.
I don't want to go. And alongside that, so they're getting rid of that. There's still options. They are making amendments so landlords can still recover for other reasons, such as moving back in or wanting to sell. But even then, the details around that are still changing. The notice period for a landlord wanting to sell the property is they can't do it in the first 12 months of a new tenancy. They have to give 4 months notice to leave.
And have a reason. There needs to be a reason, and to prove one of those grounds. There's new grounds being created around if the landlord or their family need to move into the property or they need to sell. Potential loopholes around that I think still need to be clarified, because a landlord could have a difficult tenant and say, I need to sell the property. Yeah. And then the tenant moves out, they put it on the market. Yeah. Couldn't sell it. So someone else has moved back in again.
They put it on the market at a clearly unachievable amount. Yeah. It's a fiction because they just wanted to use a mandatory eviction ground. But there's some attempts at combating that. I think less directly. It doesn't appear that they're getting inspectors or they're getting someone who's going to look at that and say, you've done this wrong. But it's almost socially with the landlord register. Yeah. And this proposal that if you want to be a landlord, you have to be registered. Yeah. If you're not on it, you face fines. You shouldn't be letting it out. And it's a place for tenants to record observations on landlords. Yeah. So
make it easier for the local authorities to enforce anything because they know who's the landlord. Yeah. But whether the people they're trying to catch, which are the rogue landlords now, they're just going to carry on being rogue landlords, is it actually going to solve the problem? And it's just putting more burden on the landlords who already do it well and will continue to do so.
This is it. This is like if all this legislation is to combat those rogue landlords, the ones that are breaking the law anyway, are they going to pay any attention to a new law coming in that requires them to sign up? Yeah. I personally, I think that's a little bit buy to buy. I know that the landlords that we look after, we'll sort them out on this register. Yeah. they'll be on it. We look after the properties. Everything's in good nick. I don't think, a law-abiding landlord, a good landlord now, is going to continue to be a good landlord.
Yeah.
It'll just be another way in which that's recognised.
Yeah.
But it is
landlords
another...
who are already doing it well will largely, on the whole, actually be unaffected by all this legislation because they're in it for the long-term capital growth of their property. They want to maintain it to good standards, so they're not going to be...
They were already looking after their tenants.
Yeah, exactly. And probably wouldn't increase the rent more than once in a 12-month period anyway, which is another thing that the legislation is bringing in. But I don't think we've ever had a landlord who's put it up more than once or even tried to put it above what's considered a fair market rent.
Yeah, because we always do that. If we are going back to a landlord, if they have asked what could we increase the rent to, it's always with a view of let's be realistic as to what you would actually get, not you want to get some £100 extra a month, let's just try it. It's no, we work with everyone to make sure that everyone's happy.
Yeah. And there's a tribunal where tenants can actually challenge any increases that are unfair, and they need to present evidence. I mean, that actually exists now. And I imagine a bit like the court system is probably at capacity, so they'll need to put some resources into that. How long it takes, who knows? But yeah, tenants can actually challenge it. And that's possibly a loophole for tenants that might need to be closed up, is that, you could say to a tenant, given their 2 months notice, there's going to be a rent increase.
Yeah.
They then decide to go down the route of challenging it.
Yep.
Which could take months.
And it's key to know you can't increase the rent in that period either.
Yeah.
It will continue at what rent it was until the result of that challenge has been resolved.
Yeah.
And at the moment, it's kind of hard to tell it would almost be unfair to say that result could be backdated.
I don't think from things I've heard so far, I don't think it can be backdated. So that's something for a tenant. They can buy themselves an extra...
It encourages them to do it no matter what.
Yeah.
Because it will only be to their benefit.
Yeah. So they may, take feedback on board and find a way so that those loopholes are closed up.
That was earlier in this process. Previous government in this process was promising reforms to the courts, more support.
Yes. Well, that's a massive thing. That's really where a lot of this is going to fall down. Is the system for regaining possession puts more pressure on the court system.
Yes, exactly.
Which is already a very lengthy process for landlords.
Pretty overburdened, takes a whole while. I think the reality is, the sort of a brief summary of it is going to happen. It's going to change.
Yeah.
This law's coming in. It's going to make landlords work and behave differently. It's going to make agents behave differently. It's going to make the market change, and we've got to adapt
landlords,
to it.
Particularly the accidental landlords, are likely to exit the market and not want to continue with the risk. But those who are in it for the long term will continue to do so and go by good practice. But ultimately, I think it will have a supply and demand impact on the rental properties that are available. And what does that do? It just pushes the rents up. In a funny roundabout way, it's just going to put the rent up for tenants, which I don't think is the intention of it.
No, but it's going to be the outcome, because it's going to get pushed through. They'd be looking for the campaign win. So, it seems all the signs are pointing towards it moving through the whole process, getting Royal Assent.
But it's going to be also more important for landlords to choose the right tenant in the first place. So actually having an agent who's behind you, got watertight, document storage, and has an audit trail of absolutely everything, is going to be more critical than ever.
I think with the introduction, something we didn't even have the opportunity to touch on, because we're probably going to need to do this a couple more times to cover the whole bill.
We've got a lot to cover.
But the proposed property ombudsman, the landlord register, it is going to be a portal for compliance, a portal for checklists, and you're going to need to complete it. Because it's going to be so much more easy for local authorities to monitor. Just as a little gotcha to start with, the first initial breach or minor breaches are £7,000.
Yeah.
And then
major fines,
local authority is going to have the power to pursue beyond that with £14,000 for further breaches. And then for criminal breaches, they will have the power to prosecute with unlimited fines and jail sentences. So
big penalties, it's worth it. And there's already a whole load of compliance that you need to adhere to as a landlord anyway.
Yeah, so it's not worth the risk.
It's not worth the risk.
It's not worth it.
And I think we probably will see an increase in landlords using the rent guarantee and legal expenses cover.
Yeah.
You have a lot who already use it now, but with the rent arrears, it's going up a month, isn't it? So it's going from up to 3 months. So that's another month of arrears.
And it's not even talking about the wider world that we're living in these days, where it is harder for everyone.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it is more difficult.
Big change.
I'm going to work out some way to bring that to a wrap, I think, Matt. And I didn't think that far ahead in the conversation.
Well, we were hoping you'd keep walking back and go in there. Damn, you noticed where we were going.